The family of Ahmaud Arbery, surrounded by civil rights leaders and supporters, felt joy and relief as they made their way out of the courthouse in Brunswick, Georgia this afternoon. Just hours ago, the three men charged with killing Ahmaud were found guilty of murder. Good evening. This is Making the Case. I'm Yodit Tewolde. We're breaking down the jury's verdict, starting with the most serious of charges for each defendant in a moment. But first, let's go live to Glenn County Courthouse in Georgia, where BNC's Dre Clark is standing by. Hey, Dre. Now, you've covered this trial from start to finish, talking with folks who have gathered outside of the courthouse throughout this trial, just to get this to this moment here. Tell us what it was like there on the ground as that verdict was being read.
You know, someone said to me today, it was as if they had been holding their breath for the last 1 year and 9 months, and finally they can breathe after hearing the verdict come out today, guilty for all three of those defendants. Remember, it wasn't until 74 days after Ahmaud Arbery had been shot and killed, and the video was leaked on social media, that this story really gained momentum and gained massive attention, massive media attention and protests. And that's what led to the three murder indictments and helped get us to where we are today. And for Ahmaud Arbery's mother, Wanda Cooper Jones, she said it again today that there was a point in time when she never thought this day would come. But when they heard the judge read guilty verdicts for Gregory and Travis, McMichael and William Bryan, you heard Ahmaud's father in the back of the courtroom yell, and on the outside where I was standing, people were cheering, they were crying, they were hugging. It's been a long, difficult, emotional journey, but today it reached the conclusion that so many people have been waiting for and so many people have been praying for. Those three men who shot and killed Ahmaud Arbery, we can now call them murderers. What happened to Ahmaud Arbery was a murder, and that's case closed. Yodit.
As always, great reporting, Trey. Thank you so very much. Now, throughout this hour, we discuss what those guilty verdicts actually mean. We hear from the Arbery family post-verdict and take a look ahead to the next legal fight these defendants, now convicted murderers, will soon be facing. Here to help walk us through it all, my panel of legal experts, starting with trial attorney and crisis manager Monique Pressley, criminal defense attorney Sue Ann Robinson, and Titus Nichols, who is a former prosecutor. Glad to have all of you with me tonight. Now, before we get into the specific counts each defendant was found guilty on, I want to first get your reaction to today's verdict. Monique, to you first.
It was accountability. It's not justice, because justice would be crimes like this not continuing to happen in this country. Justice would be Ahmaud making it to Thanksgiving dinner last year and this year. But what this is accountability and the justice system working as it should. So as I said earlier today on Twitter, when prosecutors do their jobs, when judges do their jobs, when the facts are presented to a jury and they apply the law to it properly, we end up with right outcomes, and that's what we ended up with today.
Titus, many thought that this was an open shut case, but as a former prosecutor, you understand that no case should ever be seen as a slam dunk, no matter how airtight the evidence is. Your thoughts on the verdict?
I think the verdict represents three murderers have been convicted, and they're going to be held accountable for the horrible crime they committed. As a former prosecutor, I understand that no case is open and shut, even when you have a video, because you can't predict what 12 individual people will do in the jury deliberation room. However, 12 citizens of Glenn County got it right today, and they came to the correct verdict.
Sue Ann, you've been on the show. You've talked about the defense and the shenanigans they've pulled throughout this entire trial. Were you surprised by this verdict?
I'm not gonna lie, when I went to the courtroom on Monday and I actually physically saw the jury, I got concerned. I was like, okay, the numbers are real. That's a mostly white jury, and this could be a problem. So once hearing the verdict, I was definitely relieved, breathed a sigh of relief. I know that the state presented a very good case, argued against all of the defense's self-defense and the citizen's arrest. They did an excellent job in their presentation. So I definitely at the end breathed a sigh of relief, like, yes, people saw through the nonsense and looked at the facts of the case and applied the law appropriately.
All right, so now let's get into the actual details of who was found guilty on which charges. There were a total of 9 counts, which included malice murder and felony murder, the most serious of the bunch because it carries a maximum penalty of life. Now, all 3 defendants played a different role on February 23rd, but they were all charged with the same 9 counts. Only one, Travis McMichael, was found guilty on all charges. Titus, people expected guilty verdicts for the other 2 co-defendants. Unlike his son, Greg McMichael was found not guilty for malice murder. Same with William Bryan, who was also acquitted on one of the felony murder counts. Explain for our viewers the difference between malice and felony murder, please.
Typically under Georgia, felony murder requires that some underlying felony was committed and that resulted in someone's death. So if it's an armed robbery, that's felony murder. If it's aggravated assault, that's felony murder. Malice murder is essentially Georgia's equivalent of having a first-degree murder. It's essentially saying this was an intentional act to take the life of somebody without any legal justification, such as self-defense or anything of that like that. Very typically, you'll have a defendant charged with both malice murder as well as felony murder. And I've had jury trials where it's only one defendant charged with malice murder, felony murder. The jury will convict them of malice but not felony murder, or felons but not malice. It really just depends on what the individual jury feels is the appropriate verdict.
All right, so in Georgia, malice murder is basically you intended to kill somebody, whereas felony murder, you didn't necessarily intend to kill them, but you committed a felony, and as a result, someone died. All right, got it. Monique, you and I are from Texas, and the law here is that a person can be criminally responsible for the actions of another person, that even if Travis McMichael pulled the trigger, his dad was with him when they chased Ahmaud in their truck, and then William Bryan helped corner Ahmaud in his own car. Let me first say that I think the jury did an excellent job, not because they came back with guilty verdicts, but because they really had a lot of thought put into applying the facts with the law for each count. I wasn't surprised by the jury's decision to acquit Bryan on the malice murder and one of the felony murder counts. But I was surprised by the not guilty on the malice murder for Greg McMichael. I mean, he, along with his son, grabbed their guns. Like I said, they jumped in their truck. They went hunting for Ahmaud. He was even heard on the 911 call telling Ahmaud he was going to blow his head off. Did the jury get it wrong for those 2, or specifically for the elder McMichael?
I don't think so, because though he may have been threatening and yelling, he didn't do it, and he could have. And so I think that there was evidence that the jury could look at to consider that if he had formed the requisite intent to commit murder, that he would have been a contributing factor to the actual death. And so I agreed with their finding there. I do believe that there was a level of depravity, not just intentionality, in the actions of Travis McMichael. And so I could see how, once they saw the video again, once they figured out what the exact roles were, and especially for Bryan, what he could have seen, what he couldn't have seen, they basically ruled out things that he did and did not participate in, and they found accordingly. So I say, juries, when given an opportunity, will also do their jobs. And I hope that with this jury, there were a lot of assumptions made with the Rittenhouse jury. And I went on Twitter again and did interviews and said, one case, one jury, one terrible prosecution, one hideous judge does not mean that it's precedent for the entire country or precedent for the way juries are going to respond. So now we have this jury of 11 white people and 1 black person in the Deep South who did really the exact opposite, who did what they were supposed to do based on the facts that were presented to them. Well, frankly, the same as Rittenhouse jury did, except we got a just outcome this time because everybody else did their jobs.
Now, those who were surprised, guys, by the verdicts, not surprisingly, was the defense. This is what Travis McMichael's attorney had to say.
We very much honor the larger conversation that's happening around the country. The fact that this case was brought into the fold of that conversation has made it very difficult indeed to have a trial in the normal sense of what we typically experience. And so to the extent that that has played a role in this or played a role in the verdict, we don't fully understand it right now, but I'm sure in the oncoming months we'll get more information about it.
Sue Ann, the defense from the start of this trial argued that this case wasn't about race, even though they were blatant about plucking off every black prospective juror they could and their dog whistle rhetoric throughout the entire trial. Laura Hogue, the attorney who represents Greg McMichael and the one who made disparaging comments about Ahmaud in her closing arguments, was heard saying that she was, quote, floored with a capital F, according to a poll reporter. Do you believe race played a role in the decision-making by this jury?
Race played a role in what the McMichaels and Bryan did. So I think because the case is premised upon racial profiling, essentially they've gone to jail because they saw a black man in their neighborhood and decided that they were going to figure out what he's doing. And when they couldn't figure or they couldn't find anything, they just decided to basically falsely imprison him and kill him. So the case is premised upon racial profiling. So there's no way that race could not be interwoven into the case because it was in the actions of the defendant. But at the end of the day, I think the jury put their faith in the facts of the case and what happened. There's a video, which obviously was the most compelling piece of evidence, and then the actual audio, including the defendant's own statements. I think the defense attorney, Lisa Hogue, was absolutely reprehensible, disgusting to make those comments that weren't even necessary for the defense of her client. You know, I don't know if she thought, hey, this is a white jury, so I'm gonna, you know, blow some of these dog whistles and see how it turns out. But I can tell you, and as we all see now, it did not work out well. It didn't bode well. And even when she was saying those things, it felt uncomfortable. So I think the jury, obviously, you know, they did the right thing.